Hey, welcome everyone to another installment of CEO at the Gas Pump. Today, we have a special guest. Well, all our guests are special, but this one is particularly special, and I'm excited to do it. We have here who I would call, the the godfather of government contracting. Some people call him Mr. Government Contracting. We have Walter Cotton III here. He's one of a handful of dedicated retired service members that are credited with helping the federal government increase its level of contracting with the disabled veteran community from 750 million to more than 19 billion annually. Mr. Cotton, nice to have you. How are you doing today?
I'm well. Thanks for having me as your guest.
Of course, of course. uh, I was thinking back. I remember when the first time you interviewed me, you said one day the role's gonna be reversed and you'll be interviewing me. And now that we're full circle, everything came full circle, and now I'm here interviewing you. Uh, yeah, there's so much things I want to, uncover and unpack in this segment. We're not gonna be able to get through everything because you have a long history of success in doing a whole bunch of different things. But I would like to just get straight to it. 19 billion in federal contracting. Some in certain communities and in other communities, you have 150 billion responsible. Tell me that that's bigger than some countries' GDP. How what is the thought process? Like how did you how did you get to that point? How did you get to that point of being so proficient that you acquired 19 billion and 150 billion in federal contracting?
That's an interesting question. They say necessity tends to be the mother of invention, and so as most people who pay attention know, I am also a disabled veteran. And in the early days when they were thinking about the 3% contracting goal for disabled veterans, that's when I got wind of it. And I had a background in working with Fortune 500 companies. And so I thought that this was going to be, my lottery ticket, man. They had $7 billion that they were about to put on the street for people that had the preference that I had. So I was about to, how Dave Chappelle say that I was about to be rich, right? But when I started to approach the opportunity, I learned all of the barriers, all of the potholes that stop people from being successful. I mean, I literally thought that, I could just go up to DC and say, hey, I'm a service disabled veteran, give me a contract. And that wasn't the case. And I actually did that, right? I flew up to DC. I met with I'm not going to say his name. He was the director of DOD's Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization at that time, and I said, "Hey man, listen, this job description says you're supposed to help me get a contract." And he said, "That's not how it works." And like most new entrepreneurs, I did everything bass backwards, right? I had gotten my little SBA loan and I went out and got my mahogany desk and the, business cards and I'm spending the money and ain't making no money. So by the time I got to DC, I actually needed a contract because I had a wife at home that was expecting me to bring the bacon back. And so when I learned that, listen, dude, you need more than a preference to get a contract, I was hurt. So what I did was I went back and did what I was taught as a young person, which was to study myself approved. That's why you hear me utilizing that terminology all the time. And I took the FAR, the Federal Acquisition Regulation, and the Code of Federal Regulation, and I started reading it like it was the red letter edition of the Bible, man, because I needed to find something to tell my wife to get her off my back. Well, as I was reading, through the material, I kept seeing joint venture, but joint ventures, especially small business joint ventures, weren't common. And so the language suggested that it accommodated my need. And my need was past performance. My need was capability and capacity. And the language suggested that if I joint ventured with someone, I would get that. And so I tilted at that windmill, did my first joint venture, which was a small joint venture. We did an $8 million contract, but that was so novel at that time that they, put me on the cover of veteran business magazines and the like. And the difference between me and the next guy that found his way to that information, you know, I, I, I'm not the dullest pencil in the bunch, right? Let me just say it that way. And so I said to myself, if I had this much difficulty finding my way to a solution that was going to work for me, my fraternity members that were still in BDUs and boots were never going to find their way to this information. And so what I did was kind of jumped into the advocacy lane and went around the country with the American Legion and the SBA on my dime evangelizing the good news of joint venturing to veterans who would listen. And you can't jump in that kind of water without getting wet, if you will, right? And so one advocacy event led to a group of relationship building experiences, and those relationship building experiences led to offers and opportunity for me to participate in the creation of legislation, and the momentum took off. And what was an $8 million contract for me individually has turned into hundreds of billions of contracts for people who wear my social uniform that followed the strategies and philosophies that I had an opportunity to popularize. And I make sure that I distinguish between those ideas and concepts that I identified versus popularized, right? Joint venturing was always in the Code of Federal Regulations. People just weren't using it, right? And I understand why now in hindsight. So what I did was popularize utilizing joint ventures as a capacity building solution for small businesses. And of course, that which works for disabled veterans works for women owned businesses. It works for hub zone businesses. And so those other communities were peeking over our shoulder, right, as the disabled veteran business community was growing, and they started applying or employing joint ventures, and the number grew exponentially from there. So that's a long answer to your short question.
Yeah, that was a lot, and I wanted to unpack a couple things that you said. You said that you started working with other Fortune 500 companies. Can you take me through that process? Like, so you get out the military and then you jump right into entrepreneurship and you know started making cold calling companies to get into business, or did you go to school for entrepreneurship, or how did that happen? How did that process take place?
So that's a good question. I retired with a service-connected disability in 1985, and I thought it was a tragedy, right? That my everything was over. But ultimately, I learned that I had benefits like the what you guys today call the Veteran Readiness and Employment Program, right? We called it the Vocational Rehabilitation and Employment Program. But I used that program to complete my undergraduate degree in accounting with a concentration in forensic accounting. And accounting in Florida requires you to take the fifth year, which is analogous to a master's degree in order to qualify for the CPA exam. So after I finished my degree, and this is kind of just another example of how my mind works. At that time, the CPA profession was under attack because the consulting profession, the information technology profession, was starting to grow. And in the CPA arena, you have to be a licensed CPA in order to have equity in the firm. But the non CPAs, right, the technologists, those were the ones that were bringing in all of the bucks. And so we had things happening like we had what was known as the Big Six. Arthur Anderson was one of the big accounting firms. They spun off a division which became Anderson Consulting. And so, to make a long story short, as I was finishing my degree in accounting, I looked out at the time horizon, looked in a mirror, and saw that, I was this young, well, not young at that point, I was a mature student, but I'm this black pickaninny that's going into this profession that's dominated by Anglo-Saxon white males, and my trajectory to become partner just didn't look good, right? Like they
Mhm.
talk about the path to winning the election. I just didn't see a pathway to me becoming a partner. So after I finished my degree, I jumped on a plane and flew to Arizona and bought my first franchise, information technology franchise, and I tried to tilt at the entrepreneurial thing. And like all first generation entrepreneurs, I failed miserably. And that caused me to go look for employment. I found a position as president and general manager of a interconnect, and those are organizations that install PBX systems, private branch exchange systems in hotels and restaurants. And that position lent itself to me being picked up by Sprint at that time to work within their indirect channel. And Sprint is the Fortune 500 example that I'm sharing here. And within that organization, I was in their partner or indirect channel program, and it was kind of focused on the SMB space, or primarily small and mid-sized business space. And I asked the question, hey, why aren't we working with the multinationals, right? Because I mean, they have the same needs as these SMBs. They adopted my concept, and we expanded the program to include companies like CDW, NEC. I could go on and on and on. And so that is where I got the Fortune 500 experience. And in that environment, joint ventures were common. Strategic alliance, there was common approach to breaking through barriers or creating value force multipliers. So I left that perch to focus my attention on government contracting. And that's why I had the Fortune 500 executive experience to look at the space and opportunity a little bit differently than the new entrant or the neophyte would be able to look at it. Does that make sense? Does that answer the question?
Yes, yes. So you basically you started your journey through a franchise that ended up not working out for you, which ultimately led you to going to get a job as president of Sprint, and
Well, no,
your experience.
president. No, I was president and general manager of a company called America 2 Communications. And from the America 2 Communications, I was recruited, dare I say, stolen by Sprint to work within their indirect channel.
And then from there, when you worked with Sprint, then you kind of got an idea of joint venturing and partnering because it was something common in that space.
Yes, and actually, let me connect the chronology, because this would be important, because as I said, when I finished my degree, I recognized I was a serial entrepreneur, right? Went down to Arizona and bought my first franchise, which failed miserably. Uh, Tucked my tail between the legs and went back into corporate America to make money to pay the bills, but still had that entrepreneurial itch, right? And I learned about a another benefit that I had, which is called VetFran, right? That's the a program where veterans could secure fully funded franchises with 10% down. And they had this thing called the Patriot Express loan at that particular point that you could get, and just by a signature loan, basically, right? And so I literally left Sprint to again pursue my entrepreneurial vision of this VetFran program. And it was through that experience that I learned about government contracting, because I had a break fix franchise that repaired computers. right? Expedex was the name of the franchise, and I had gotten a call to go fix a multifunctional copier at the VA there in St. Petersburg, right? And all my technicians, the people I was outsourcing to, right, they were unavailable, but it was an urgent call. So I said, I'm not the dullest tool in the shed. I went through
Mhm.
the training, I could figure it out. And so I went out on the job, and what probably should have been a maybe half hour or hour job, 4 hours later,
Mhm.
my, my escort came back to see how I was doing, and I'm working through it, and he started asking me questions, like, you know, what's my relationship to this company? And I told him that I was the owner of the company. He's like, really? He went away and he came back and he brought a piece of paper back. And on that piece of paper, he had the hierarchy of the contract award. So he showed me the prime contractor who had gotten the contract. He showed me the subcontractor that they subcontracted to, who subcontracted to who ultimately subcontracted the work out to me. I was the fifth man on the list. And he said, man, if you could become the prime contractor, right, you would make all of this spread that they're taking out of the transaction. And he said, did you hear about this public law 10650 where they're creating this 3% contracting goal for veterans? And I said, no. And he said, you should take a look at it. Went home, shut down the franchise, loaded up my truck, and went to DC. So that's how I got aware of the disabled veteran contracting program, and that was the catalyst that pointed me in that direction.
And okay, so and when you found got wind of that, the 3% for veterans, that's when you went to DC and thought that you could just go to DC and get a contract. That's
Yeah,
correct?
yeah, because my
Okay.
man said, I mean, and this is why I talk about things like the Dunning-Kruger effect and the importance of studying yourself approved. Because once he said 3% contracting goal, I made a lot of assumptions. I thought I knew what was going on and things like that. And honey, I'll be back. I'm going to get this. Right as my bank account is dwindling down. I'm gonna go make this happen. Right. But as you said, I learned the reality about how things work, right? And it was a significant wake up call for me and me and my family.
And once you experienced that, then you went to read the FAR and CFR to basically. So did you read the whole FAR, like, or was it certain sections that you were focusing on primarily
Good
because you're
question, because the statutes and regulations in the federal government is like an ocean of stuff, right? You can get lost in that stuff. And so, what I did, first thing was take some of the experience that I got from my academic effort, because in accounting you do auditing, right? And so you need to stage the audit, right? You need to set up all your documentation. And so I did the same thing with that. And as I started looking at the ocean of information, I kept seeing these pockets, right? There's pockets of information on small business contracting, like the Small Business Act, right? I don't have to read all of the statutes, right? I just need the Small Business Act to understand it. When I opened up the FAR, the Federal Acquisition Regulation, Part 19, which is one chapter in the FAR, is the one that deals with small business contracting, right? So I quickly understood that, I didn't need to boil the ocean to get the understanding that I was looking for. And I just hyper focused on that material. And when I looked up, I said, man, you know, this is doable. Like, like why aren't more people doing it, right? So I got all of the apprehension from the fact that not a lot of people were doing it, right? So I said I'll give it a try, and I did that. And I don't want to make it sound like it was easy. Like I just made the decision and went to get it done. Because the critical asset that I needed was that joint venture partner, right? And
Mhm.
so, I mean, I was fortunate that one of my friends from junior high school was living there in DC and had an extra room, and so I would fly up to DC, stay in the extra room, and just pound the pavement, man. Trying to find a joint venture partner, somebody that would be willing to work with this disabled veteran. I mean, I didn't even know what I was talking about, man. Probably was, hoobie boo, right? I was
Mhm.
trying to get it done. But long story short, I found my way to an organization that was willing to do the joint venture. We did the joint venture, got the contract, and yeah, I don't want to say the rest is history because we're still writing that
Yes, sir.
history.
Yes, sir. So, okay, and you said that you won that contract for $8 million, correct?
Yes.
And once you got a taste of that, you you decided that the best decision would be to ultimately come back and help your brothers in arms, brother and sisters in arms, or did you continue to go after more federal contracts and ultimately decided to make that pivot, or was it after you got that and then you was like, I got to help everybody else. Like, come on, everybody. Did you?
Yeah, I guess I was just raised right, right? I mean, and people hear these adages, but for me, they're standards by which I govern and live my life, and I've always learned things like to one whom much is given, much is expected, right? And I recognize that even at that early stage, that I had knowledge that was valuable to other servicemen and women, right? And the advocacy space made sense to me because no one was out there doing it. And again, I'm not the dullest tool in the shed, but if it took me the level of effort that it took me to find my way to that, I absolutely knew that my brothers and sisters in BDUs and boots, right, weren't going to be able to do it unless somebody got a bag of breadcrumbs and left the trail. And so I made the sacrifice and selflessly did that. And so, quite candidly, there are people out there that are 10x times more wealthy than I am as a result of their government contracting experience because of the contributions and investments that I've made.
Wow. Okay, I want to switch gears here for a minute because you said you brung up about the Small Business Act, and I read in your bio, that you were responsible for co-authoring the Small Business Act of 2010. Is that correct?
Well, it wasn't the Small Business Act of 2010, but you're honing in on a very good question. And it was actually the Jobs and Credit Act of 2010. And so, as you can imagine, you can't do the good work that I was doing with the veteran community without getting people's attention, right? And so,
Mm.
in that particular instance, I think it was Senator Olympia Snowe and Senator Landrieu that were collaborating on that particular bill. And there was a contracting section. And at that time, I was wrestling with the idea of what we do with our veterans once they graduate their size standard. And I was aware of the attrition that the 8As experience, right? Once 8As graduate, woo, it's like they fall right off a cliff. They like disappear. And I said, man, we need to put in place a succession planning strategy. Again, an idea that came from my accounting training, right? That would allow our service disabled veterans to easily pivot through their size standard. As they grow, they would have a pivot opportunity. And the only thing that I saw that made sense was the affiliation exemption under the mentor protege program. But disabled veterans didn't have access to it. So, in the Jobs and Credit Act of 2010, I wrote the language and the provisions for a mentor protege program. And at that time, I was targeting our disabled veterans, but because I needed a little bit of legislative leverage, I also included the women-owned business community. And they say in DC, in the Beltway, you can't write good legislation without it getting hijacked. And so SBA hijacked that legislation and used it to create what you guys know today as their all small business mentor protege program.
So so what I'm hearing you say is you're responsible for the SBA having the mentor protege program. That's correct. Is that correct?
Apologize for that. Yeah, I'm saying that directly with a full and deep throated voice. I am the author of the language that created the all small business mentor protege program that you enjoy at the SBA. Fact check that.
Okay, how do you even get to that point to where you get the author, write a law? Like how does that look? How did you get into that position to where you could be the person to write the law and to ultimately get it passed through Congress and Senate?
Well, when you're on the advocacy side of the equation, you get to participate in a lot of events that give you a tremendous amount of visibility. And so the language and messaging that I was delivering was actually correlating with the results that people were seeing. So the powers that be, when they had a need for information in my area, they would say, "Hey, is the bald guy available?" you know, he's pretty smart. So again, like I said, you can't dive in that kind of water without getting wet. I became known, and when the Obama administration was putting together what is their seminal jobs creation legislation, which was the Jobs and Credit Act of 2010, I got a call from a friend of a friend, and they said, "Hey, would you like to take a look at that?" And I said, "Yeah," and the rest is history.
What I could appreciate about you, Mr. Cotton, is the fact that you make the above the rim, you do above the rim things on the regular basis, you know. And I would like to talk about your some of your initiatives that you have. You had the Black Veteran Empowerment Council. You was the first spokesperson for the disabled veteran community. What 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 drives you to create these initiatives and to do these initiatives? So what drives you that? What motivates you?
It's just a unique um, capability, talent that I've had all my life. It's like an artist who has music that comes into their mind. They've got to get it out, right? They would go crazy if they just, sat on it, right? And so I've been that kind of person. I've always had the ability to have a unique view of the world, connect dots, and I get a lot of pleasure and joy out of helping people. And there's this old adage that says if you help enough other people become successful, success can't avoid you.
Yes, yes, 100% agree. Okay, I would. I was just thinking, man, because all the great things that you going on. I would like to talk about your boutique style consulting firm. So you have all your initiatives going, and now you have your consulting firm and your ability to movement. Can you speak about your ability, the things that you have going on with your consulting firm and the ability to movement?
Yes, and I am a consultant for hire, right?
Mhm.
But I'm very picky about the people that I will take on as clients, all right? My preference is for them to be disabled veterans, all right? That because that's my
Mhm.
that's my sweet spot, my nucleus. So if you're a disabled veteran, an educated disabled veteran that's ready to grow to the next level, I'm the coach, right? I'm the consultant that you want on your side of the side of the table. But in addition to that, the efforts and actions that we're seeing to kind of disrupt and disturb things like the race-based contracting under the dismantled DEI initiative, I see as producing additional value for my disabled veteran constituency, right? So as they dismantle DEI, there is going to be a need for us to support the government's requirement for quality contractors. And we're trying to reshore our manufacturing. I mean, we've got so many things that we need to do to ensure that our national defense industrial base is where it needs to be to protect the country. So I'm hyper focused right now on sharing with every disabled veteran who has ears to hear the opportunity that exists for us in this market space. Because as they shake out all of those MWBEs and small disadvantaged businesses that are no longer contract viable, it creates a huge opportunity for the ready, the capable disabled veteran. And so I have a strong campaign afoot to make sure that every veteran who's looking to create generational wealth knows that the opportunity is there. What we are additionally doing, though, in terms of the ability to movement, is we're trying to connect that community with the least competitive pathways that can be made available to them. And so there's another community that we're connected to right now, which is the Ability One community. And so we are creating joint venture opportunities with that community so that we can take advantage of some unique legislative differentiators that they bring to the table. So you said it earlier that I like to do the above the rim things. I like to do them on the regular. And I don't know, I feel sometimes I'm blessed with that capability because the extraordinary I do on the regular. The miraculous just takes me a little longer.
Okay, for the audience who they may not be aware of the DEI or the dismantling DEI, could you explain to them a little bit in brief what the dismantling of DEI or even what is DEI?
Well, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, is a strategy that has grown out of the early civil rights movement. Blah 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 blah. Right? The you know
Mhm.
the preference based hiring, the preference based position and delivery system is what it is. That system, if you will, has long violated the Constitution, right? It's constitutionally unviable for our government to provide treatment to one race that it doesn't provide to other races, right? But they've been doing that for decades, right? They've built this huge infrastructure and a bunch of programs to support it. And so what the government has made a decision to do is kind of roll back all of that entitlement kind of stuff, right? Because it really erodes our quality as a an industry not to be fielding our best in class for everything that's done, right? And so they're trying to steer it back towards a value based ecosystem. And so under this initiative, they're looking to take all of the diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, the preference programs that have been put in place that are race based, and eliminate them and replace them with race neutral solutions. And so what that means, and if you're a person that is melanin, right, you need to listen to me while I say this loud and clear. Tomorrow, the advantages that you enjoy because of the DEI climate are going to be gone. And so smart money suggests to you that you need to be looking for a succession solution today. And if you're hearing what I'm saying, one of the best possible pathways for you to consider is a joint venture with a service disabled veteran that already has access to your customer. And I'm gonna just leave that right there.
And I also would like to add, you spoke about this dismantling DEI years ago. I saw it's on YouTube. You spoke of, I believe it was like in 2018 or 19, where you spoke that this it was unconstitutional, viable, inviolable, and so you already saw this coming way before it had, it even came down to this pipeline right now it's where it's going to get passed. Correct? Yeah.
Well, I have been talking about this for some times, and I for some time now, and I'm no Nostradamus, right? I'm not trying to, predict the future. One of my gifts or talents is I'm able to accurately connect the dots, right? And I've studied enough to, have the information necessary to make sure that, I'm factual in my connection. And so I see things emerging. And for example, one of the events you're talking about that I reacted to in my writing was when President Biden went down to the 100th anniversary of the Black Wall Street massacre and promised to increase the federal spending for small disadvantaged businesses, and this is air quotes, is to quote President Biden, to include black and brown people. And when he said that, I clutched the pearls. I was like, wait a second, that's constitutionally unviable. That there is no way that he could get that done. And so I wrote an article about that, and I asked the question, what are we dealing with here? Did this guy, blow a dog whistle? Is this, Barack Obama, Joe Thurman? I mean, Joe Biden or Strom Thurmond, Joe Biden? I didn't know what we were dealing with. And after that event, all of these court cases that started dismantling policies and programs started to hit. We had the Ultima lawsuit, which found the 8A program, right? It's immutable presumption unconstitutional. We had the attack against the Minority Business Development Agency, right, where the lawsuit found that agency, violating the Constitution. So I'm not a psychic, GovCon psychic. I'm just a good researcher that is able to rightly divide things, and I share my predictions with people that are a part of my community.
And we thank you for that. And we really do. Your journey is inspiring and very impactful. And I know that it made an impact on me because, when I first started, looking at the government contract, I can say that, like I said, oftentimes I looked on YouTube University and I was everywhere, and which ultimately led me, stagnant. But after, meeting with you and getting the knowledge, it just opened my mind to so many opportunities. As you say, there is no box. And with that, could you leave everybody with, one piece of wisdom that you could share with the world and with veterans and disabled veterans or anybody who wants to get into federal contracting? Could you leave us with one piece of advice that'll help us?
Very simply, in this season, I mean, if you're paying attention to any of the signals and signs, what you want to do if you are a disabled veteran, you want to get yourself into a position where you are both contract ready and contract viable because the floodgates are already open. You may not see the water, but the floodgates are already open. And if you are a small disadvantaged business, let me just say it the way it needs to be said. If you are a black owned business, you need to be beating the streets right now to find yourself a disabled veteran that you can do a joint venture with so that you can insulate those contract awards that you already have. And how would you insulate them? Well, very simply put, in many instances, you already have a relationship with your customer and they're comfortable with you. And so this dismantling DEI thing is going to disrupt their working relationship. It's going to disrupt their ecosystem. So they would be pleased to hear you come to the table with a solution that still allows them to have access to you. Don't let or wait till your customer has to come up with that solution. Proactively engage now so that you are the solution when the time comes.
There you have it, folks. If you're a disabled veteran, you need to be proactive and find a source of supply, a partner. And if you're a small disadvantaged business, you need to be partnering with a disabled veteran and to protect and insulate yourself to so you can still be competitive in this changing federal contracting space. With that said, thank you, Mr. Cotton, for your time. Um, this has been another installment of See You at the Gas Pump. We have Mr. Walter Cotton the third here, and I'm your host, Ratwan Hill. Until next time, you guys. See you later.